Jay Clark for Renthal. In this video right now, we're going to show you how to install a set of Fatbars or twin walls, so what we call a 1/8 inch bar. So a bigger bar, a lot stronger for most use. If you're riding a lot and potentially crashing, you want to go with a thicker, heavier bar. And so in most bikes, you have to switch to larger bar mounts. Now, some of the bikes come with larger bar mounts now, and in those cases, obviously, you don't need to install bar mounts. You'll just need to install your bars, and so you could skip that part of the process. In this case, this is a new Honda. We're going to install larger bar mounts and show you how to install the bars. We'll install a set of twin walls. Same process for a set of Fatbars. So the first thing we start to do is to remove our stock grip on the left side, and we simply slide a screwdriver in a little bit, squirt a little contact cleaner. Most stock grips aren't too difficult to get off. Now, if your bike's had stronger glue installed, it can be a little more difficult. Squirt a little air in there, twist it, turn it, and it'll usually just slide right off with a little effort. If it's a grip you're not going to be keeping, you can cut it to remove it if you want to save a little time. So we start by removing the little clips that hold the kill switch down, and the number plate can come right off. In this case, we know we're going to need the number plate off just to give us some extra room when we're installing our big bar mounts. So we remove the clips that hold our kill switch line down. And in this case, we're going to try to loosen everything to make it so there's less stuff for us to hook back up. We just loosen the kill switch and clutch perch, front brake, and throttle, and just loosen them all pretty good so they slide right off. And this prevents us from having to, reset up our throttle or anything like that. It saves us some time. If everything's good and clean, there's really no reason to undo it. So at this point, we're going to start to loosen up the stock bar mounts. In this case, it's a 17 millimeter. We just put it on a ratchet. You can get right in there and loosen them both up. They're not too difficult to loosen up. In this case, this bike has rubber-mounted cones, which helps in vibration and so forth, but we'll retain the stock rubber cones inside of here. You just back off the stock nut, and washer will fall down as well. So now we're doing the same thing to the other side, removing the nut. Stock nut and washer will just come right off. So in this case, the rubber sometimes needs a little tap on the bars, and you can break loose the stock rubber pieces there. Now as they're off, the stock rubber cones are right here. And they usually like to fall out, so you want to make sure you don't lose them. And this one right here is staying in there. We remove the two stock cones here. And then we can remove all of our pieces off of our 7/8 bar. Now we have this bar that's completely done, and we're going to install our big bar mounts now. Okay, so in this case, we're ready to install our big bar mounts. So make sure we have both these stock cones in. We can remove the top clamps from the big bar mounts, so we can install our new twin walls. And they slide right in. Now, the thing you'll notice is they turn, and as they turn, the bars come closer to the rider or further away if you flip them around this direction. It's about a 5 millimeter difference. For most riders, average size, it's usually going to be rotated towards you. It also gets you over the front of the bike a little bit more. If it's a much taller rider, say well over 6 foot, some of those riders will run them more forward. So at this point we get the nuts started on both big bar mounts, and we've got them, both mounts going in the same direction, both back towards the rider with the offset. So at this point we're removing the bar pad off of our twin walls, so we have plenty of room to work with. And we've left the nuts loose on the bottom of the big bar mounts so that we can snug those up later. We're going to loop right underneath the brake line with our throttle so that it's positioned correctly. Now everything's positioned correctly, and it's a good idea just to kind of look it over before you bring it down, otherwise you have to start over and loosen everything back up. So our clutch perch is on, front brake's on, and our throttle's on, all in the correct position. We're going to install our top of our big bar mounts. You can install a little bit of grease if you don't plan on servicing these very often, but and if you're in a lot of water conditions, it can be a good idea. So at this point, we're just kind of lining the bars up with the marks on the bar. We're keeping the bars in a kind of a neutral position if you're kind of in line with the forks. Now these clamps are a bit different than the stock ones in that they don't have, you don't clamp the front ones down completely as you would a stock bar. So in this case now we're going to tighten up the front of our bar mounts, and we get the front of the bar mounts a little bit closer in the 1 millimeter range, and we want to make them even on both sides. Getting them all nice and snug all the way around. Good idea to torque, and in here you can be 16 to 18 foot-pounds, similar to stock. So at this point we're ready to tighten up our clutch lever, and we want to kind of leave it in a level position with the bar, and then we can readjust later. So right now we're just going to tighten it up, and we got the bar, the end of the clutch perch, the end of the clutch lever about 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch away from the end of the bar. So we're ready to install the throttle. We bring it all the way in and just move it out just a little bit so that it's not touching the end of the bar, and we snug back up our bolts for the throttle. We don't want the end of the throttle tube rubbing against the end of the bar, causing any drag or potential problems. And now we move the front brake, master cylinder. Most bikes will have a spacer in between, but if you don't, it's about 1 inch to 1.25 inch, 1.5 kind of max away from the throttle, into the throttle tube. So you have that gap there that you see right here. You need about this much gap, and this will allow for a good distance right here on the lever, and keep it far enough away to help prevent damage during crashes. So at this point, we're ready to reinstall our kill switch. And on this bike, it's a fuel injected bike, and has a kill switch that's a little bit easier than some of the old bikes. So it's real simple, clips in, nothing falls out of these, and so it's a little easier to install. If you do have one with the kill switches with the little black pieces that say would fall out, you'll want to make sure you get everything positioned correctly so your kill switch works properly. So you tighten up the kill switch like so. We need to put a clip on to hold the kill switch wire, but the stock clip is too short now with the twin walls or Fatbar. So you want to use like you can use black tape or a zip tie. And so in this case we have zip ties, just going to hold it on, and then we'll get some flush cut wire cutters and cut the ends of those zip ties off. So now at this point we're ready to tighten up the big bar mounts. Now that the bars are secure and top clamps are tight, we're going to start tightening up the big bar mounts. So as we tighten up the big bar mounts, a ratchet works really well. We want to be careful of deforming the stock rubber cushions. Now on some bikes they don't have these rubber cushions here, or cones you'd call them. They're just solid mounted. In this case they're rubber mounted, so you're going to snug up, and just as you start to see the rubber start to a little bit come out of its shape there, just barely. So right here we still have a fairly large gap, and we're only got a thread showing out here. So we still need to snug down much tighter here, and we'll do that right now. So we've got them down, and we want a good gauge to make sure that we're evenly tightened on both sides is by looking at the end of the threads below the nut. And we can see that right here. We've got about 3 threads, and this one's about 3.5 to 4. So we're going to go just a little bit tighter on this one. We're nice and sucked up well here. And we don't really have a proper torque spec for this. It's kind of a good feel that works pretty well. And you want to if you over tighten, the rubber cones will start to come out of the sides of the mounts. And so right there's about just right. So now we're going to reinstall our front number plate, which on some bikes is a little bit more chore with steering stabilizer and everything in the way, but just pry it in and have 2 clips on the bottom to hold it. And some have 1 bolt. In this case we have 2 bolts holding it on the top triple clamp. And make sure you get the throttle cables on the inside properly, and that nothing interferes, and that we have everything that clears well. Okay, so at this point it's a good idea to just double check all of our positions. Start with our bars, and if you run bars with a crossbar quite often, you can have a gauge of where they sit by your tool you use to tighten them up. And so right here, this is kind of where I run them, right in this position, pretty neutral in line with the forks, and we double check the tightness on all 4 all the way around. With the bars locked out, we can go around all the way and just make sure that all are still snug after we've adjusted them again, like so. At this point we can install our crossbar pad. Want the Renthal facing out for all the cameras, of course, when we're getting those shots winning the races. And then our number plate mount. So we got that all in there. So now all that's left is our lever position. And it's a little easier when you're sitting on the bike. I can feel like I'm pretty even, level with the bike. Just make sure they're there. We have a little up arrow here in the Honda to tell us which way to go. And then same thing on the clutch. I'll kind of move it right to where I want when I'm sitting on the bike. Double check. Everything's tight. All we need to do is add a left grip, or actually both grips in this case. And that is covered in our grip video. So that's all there is to installing a set of twin walls or Renthal Fatbars with some big bar mounts. If you already have large mounts, you just skip that part of this video, and that's all there is to it.